right, we'll call the board workshop to order. Let's stand for Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
All right, Denise, can we get a roll call, please?
Director Martinez. Director Johnston.
Here.
Director Shibahara. Here. Director Berman.
Here.
Director Walper.
Here.
Vice Chair Wheeler.
Here.
Chair Rydell.
Here.
Quorum.
All right, welcome everyone, and whoever is online, that seems really loud, so I'm going to move it a little bit away here. So first up, let's just roll into it. So facility and capacity assessment, come on down, Mike, and we'll get rolling on that.
Good evening, late afternoon. In front of you, Board of Directors, you have a packet of paper, a report that we'll be talking about this evening, and so you can definitely follow along. I also have a visual here for you that will help navigate and help with our report this afternoon.
Which folder is your papers in?
It is the yellow one. I believe Christina Irish gave you the blue one.
Okay.
To start off, what you have in front of you and what you have in your packet is a collection of our two latest facility condition assessments back in 2016 and then back in 2019, and what our current need in the district is by priority level, by amount, and down the list. We also
Are these two, Mike?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, just to make sure everybody's on the same
On the
page.
left-hand side, so the spreadsheet on the left-hand side, that's the smaller of the two,
Okay.
that's what we're looking at right now. So again, right in front of you is the by school list of priority, the description of the project, what the source was. So whether it's a facility condition assessment through our bond committee that we created back in our last bond effort, and then our ranges of pricing over the next few years. I decided just to provide it from 22 to 24, since it's the time frame that we're kind of discussing at the moment. I wanted just to quickly go through a little bit. You can see at the second part of your page the totals, but down to the bottom on this screen here, 2022, our total need, that's 1 through 3, a little bit over 36 million. 2023, 37 million and 673,000. And then 39 million, just over 39 million in 2024. If we break it down by priority level.
Mike, could you just really quickly give us a quick context and background of how this list got created in the first place?
Yeah, thank you.
Refresh us.
In 2016, we completed a full master plan facility condition assessment and long-range planning. The firm came through our district and went through all areas of the schools and the buildings, looking at our systems, our HVAC systems, our lighting systems, our flooring, our kitchen equipment, our gyms, and really determine where they're at by their condition and their need to be replaced within the priority level. Priority 1 focused on safety, immediate need, if we had a leaky roof, if we had hazardous material that we needed to replace. And so they worked with our district at the time, leadership at the time, and developed that list together and provided a lengthy report, in terms of about 300-page report. In 2019, when I came to the district, we were just working on completing the Awesome Grant, and we had an external company come out and do a hybrid facility condition assessment, which worked with our facilities committee to, again, walk through our district, look at what was completed in 2016, update the numbers, and then also add any additional findings from their review and observations. We then took the information to our bond committee as we were going out for a bond during that year, and really define where we wanted to focus our attention. That's where you see some of the additional things from the bond committee, redefining what the district wanted to focus on to spend the funds if we were fortunate to get a bond, and then how we're going to move forward in the oversight. Thank you. So to back up real quick, to just look at only our priority one, if we look at that in 2022, it's about 17 million, million in need, 23, 18 million, and 24. If we added level 1 and priority level 2, there's not much of a difference because there's not many priority level 3s. We have done a great job. We'll talk about what the district has done over the last 4 or 5 years in addressing these capital needs. But, we still are progressing. We have aging buildings. We have needs that need to be addressed every year, and it just keeps on growing. And then when we start talking about inflation, that has an impact to our overall number. I'll pause just for a sec to see if there's any questions.
Yeah, I'm curious about inflation. You hit it on the button there. When were these calculated, these numbers, and what percentage did you take into consideration for inflation?
We went a 4% inflation.
4%? I'm seeing 30% right now in building.
Would you like to speak on why we went the 4%?
Yeah, I did a search for construction costs, and the PCI? The PCI construction inflation right now is about 3.4, 3.7, kind of varies. And so I went at 4, not knowing what will happen the next 3 years. So we went a little bit higher at 4%. But the PCI construction inflation is at about 3.4 right now.
Okay, I'm not seeing that, and I'm spending a lot of money right now. Almost double on metal.
I would like to highlight a few other just kind of the hot things that we do see on here, the big ticket items, which is our power distribution system at the high school and many other schools. We know that we need a complete re-roof at River Mill Elementary. We've talked about that with our seismic rehabilitation project. We also have a parking lot need to be repaved. That's in the tune of about $800,000. Modernizing our schools. The discussion of AC has also been on the topic within the board and within the district the last few years, but more recently as well. And these numbers are based off of what the firm completed back in 2019 with our cost assessor. Upgrading our IT infrastructure as we expand our IT needs. Again, looking at capacity, and we'll talk about where we're at in capacity in just a few minutes, within adding classrooms, potential need for each elementary school, but we're seeing those needs at all 4 schools now. LED lighting, upgrading our sensory lighting, safety and security, resurfacing again, a number of roof repairs. Any questions before I move on to other areas?
Just one, and I don't want to belabor it too, but I think that AC in all classrooms. So we just talked about that recently and have a more updated number on that. So
We do, yes.
So these were figures that were calculated in 2019.
Yes, those figures are calculated in 2019 on commercial grade, larger rooftop units. The figures that I've given Mr. Carpenter were split units.
Splits,
and didn't occur for soft costs as well as just unknown for electrical. We do have a more, I think, defined number, and it would be a little bit more than what we expect, but it wouldn't probably not be at that cost if we went that direction with split units.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Just out of curiosity, while we're talking about those, how has the test run been for those?
Really good.
3 classrooms.
Actually, we went over there, Superintendent Carpenter and myself went over and visited those teachers not too long ago. I think our last pretty warm day. Very pleased, very happy. They were able to control the environment. They even said they got cold a little bit because it's a better environment for teaching and learning.
Excellent.
Like on this third page that I have, the spaces, like de-escalation and
Yeah.
stage place. Are those, it says addition, are those new rooms or re-imaged rooms compared to what they use now?
Re-imaged rooms were what the bond committee discussed and what those would look like, primarily re-imaged rooms. But if we were to re-image those rooms, then we would need to add additional space for classrooms that we're
Right.
taking away from there.
Thank you.
To kind of highlight capital projects that we've completed over the last 3 or 4 years, again, just showing the board and the community that our efforts, the district efforts, are still there, and we are picking apart these needs. That's the second page, or your second Excel sheet that you have in your folder. From our DDC controls improvements, our access point installation, our addition of a football field or artificial turf, gym floor replacements. We've done roofing replacements through seismic grants, indoor air quality, and you can see the fund that we've used. The majority has been through capital. About 45.9% of it has been our capital fund account. We have been fortunate to be able to use ESSER funds as well as E-rate funds to support some of these costs as well. But the majority of this $5.5 million has been primarily from our capital fund account. These items were all on our high-level priority from the facility condition assessment, which is why we were focusing on these areas first. Some of them were in response to the pandemic or just the need to be able to be more efficient with our heating control systems and having better indoor air quality for our students and teachers. On the right side of your page, you'll have a few building maps, all 4 buildings for you to look at. I wanted to be able to show the board, we wanted to be able to show the board what our current capacity is within our district. I completed an audit last week and the prior week, last 2 weeks, to be able to see what classrooms were actually being used for teaching and learning, what was being used for support services outside of our district. So if we have an external service like DHS, or a daycare that's being used in one of our classrooms, that could potentially be a classroom. Anything that's in blue at the high school that you'll see is used for teaching and learning. You'll see 2 yellow boxes. Those are rooms that are not necessarily the best setting for a classroom, but they could be if we needed to be used for a classroom. You'll see the portable that's no longer there, so that's why I didn't highlight that. But as you can see, every one of our classrooms, whether it's support service through special education and or just general teaching and learning in our gyms, in our culinary room, and our science rooms are being used. At Clackamas River Elementary, which should be the next one on there, we're at nearly 90%, 95% capacity. There are 2 spaces that are not being used for teaching and learning. The space that's in yellow towards the middle is for food bank and support services. The room to the right is currently housed an external daycare services that we have a contract and agreement with, which is a full-size classroom as well. At Estacada Middle School, again, the theme is we are at capacity. We have 1 space that is near our art room that is not being used for teaching and learning. It's being used for an additional separate space during mealtime and other support services. And really, every S room that we're currently occupying that for our adult transition is now being used for teaching and learning or special education in our classrooms, or in this middle school.
Hey, Mike, not to
Yep.
go backwards.
Yep.
On CRE, we have the big courtyard there.
Yes.
Can we just make an informal commitment to stop making courtyards in Estacada schools?
Yes, sir.
I think we learned that the commons didn't work, and I don't know why we ended up putting a courtyard here, but it's underutilized space for sure.
Absolutely. We should put a roof on it and use it for something. Yes.
Because it's a workshop, we will make no decisions this evening. However,
Thank you.
we will note your advice, Vice Chair Wheeler.
Thank you.
At River Mill, we already had seen the capacity come in last year. We purchased one portable unit and renovated 1 portable unit and relocated it to River Mill. And as you can see, the main school itself is at capacity. There's 1 classroom on the northeast of the building that is being used for more support services one-on-one that could be repurposed or reused as a classroom. In the portables, we have our adult transition program that's being used, being occupied, and then our pre-K that the district funds. There are 2 spaces in the portable, both on separate ones being used by external services, a daycare that we have a use agreement with, and Todos Juntos.
Mike, in the Rivermill Annex there, obviously the big box is the gym.
Yes,
Is it all 5th grade in that area?
I believe it is all 5th grade.
We have 4 5th grade classes then?
Three,
band room in
three
there,
fifth
too,
grade
right?
and band and choir is the
Yeah,
big one next to the gym.
Gotcha.
But that's band and choir for the whole school,
Correct.
right? Not
Yes.
just 5th grade.
That's correct.
I don't know, probably not the right time, but just when we look at those open spaces at the high school, to have an adult transition, does it make sense to have that connected with the high school as opposed to an elementary school?
So, yes and no. Historically, we have had adult transitions housed at the high school. As the adult transitions, the vision for adult transitions is in transition process. And one of the things that's important for a successful adult transitions program is actually to move it away from the high school, because these kids who graduate from high school don't necessarily want to be affiliated any longer as high schoolers. And so what we're trying to do with that program is to try to transition them more to adult living, preparing them for work, life skills, etc. And so we're in process right now in actually utilizing some of those remaining ESSER funds to see if we can establish some type of a house. We're thinking about potentially a mobile type house where half of the portable is a home and the other half of the portable is a classroom, so we can teach kids how to take care of house type things, home type things, laundry, cooking, etc., and then also have a classroom space in there as well.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
That's the majority of what I wanted to present to the board this evening. I do want to have it, open it up for discussion. And the last, in your folder, last set of paperwork is just overshots of each building. If there's a discussion out where we would add on annexes or potential portables, I'm happy to pull those maps up on the TV as well if you'd like to have that conversation.
So we're looking at building capacity, but I mean, we're also considering our enrollment, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so I feel like that almost needs to be layered on top of the buildings. Do we have the enrollment numbers tonight too?
We can get them to you. They're in the board report for next week, so we can easily pull them up. In the interim, it looks like we're going to be at around 120 to 130 more kids, and we predict that that's a trend that's probably going to stay for the next 2 or 3 years. So in essence, using that trajectory as our chart, it's likely that over the course of the next 3 or 4 years, we could see growth of between 300 and 500 students into our school district.
It's an entire new building at least.
The national average for elementary schools is around 400 students per building. It's around 700, I believe, for middle schools and 1,200 for high schools, give or take, but yeah.
For thought process, I was just talking to our next speaker about what is the cost per square foot for a building. It's about $600 per square foot.
Construction for a school building, right?
Does that include land acquisition?
No, that's just pure construction.
Dang.
Here's
Go ahead if you want to present it.
So, down. For the end of September 30th, where'd my page 1 go? We did have an increase. Sorry, my enrollment report just shut down. Of 4 students. So we are at 1,916.
Give it to us by building, just so we can write them on the.
Yes. Clackamas River was at 449.
Up 48 from last year.
Yep. River Mill is at 494, which is up 79 from last year. 494. Estacada Middle School is at 431, which is up 31 from last year. And Estacada High School is at 542, which is up 25.
So that's a total of 183 more kids this year than last year.
As far as grade level splits per building, are we fairly confident with EMS being 6th, 7th, and 8th? I mean, is that a fairly typical, because I know you said 700 was a...
It depends, and again, the 700 is also based on community size as well. So a community in Texas and a community ours kind of balances itself out. However, yeah, 6th, 7th, and 8th is a model. If we were to move it back to the way we were prior to this model, we would be exceeding capacity at the elementary schools. I do predict that we will exceed middle school capacity probably next year or the year after.
Good, if we were to add an elementary school, that could be part of that plan, is to move
That's correct. Yep. Yeah.
3 buildings at that point.
Yeah. There's really a couple of models to explore. One would be the building of a new elementary school, which I think would likely be more of a K-6 model to support that growth and move middle school back to a 7th and 8th model. A different one that we very briefly explored in the last bond campaign, which had a little bit of support but not a lot, was the potential of building a new high school. And if you built a new high school, then the current high school would be able to hold the capacity of a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade at the current Estacada High School, and then the old middle school could serve as that new elementary school. And so the capacity from that realm would be the same. And we could, that's a way that we could keep 6, 7, and 8 if that was a model the community supported.
Well, and it would keep us from running out of room at the high school level
That's correct,
Right.
which is also inevitable in this case.
down the road.
Correct.
Kind of a unique thought.
That is a unique thought.
What's the square footage of River Mill?
68.
Cost to rebuild it?
Just double checking, because we've done a few elementary schools.
A high school this size would be over 100 million.
Wait, say that again?
High school this size would be over 100 million, 108 million-ish, for $600 per square foot.
Would a high school that would meet our needs for the foreseeable future need to be this size?
Question.
In other words, like, could we afford to make it smaller if it was more efficient used space? Or more efficiently used space?
Yeah.
I would confidently say yes, if we're more efficient with the space.
But based on the growth, we don't want to get ourselves in a spot where we build it too small and then we're out of room for high
Sure.
school as well.
Or as much as I hate to give anything from Sandy credit, one of the things that they did a decent job of is that in their building of the high school, and I'm not, don't mistake me for saying I'd like to build anything like Sandy High School's school, but they were perceptive in kind of building a spot that was available to add a wing onto later in the future. And so if you were to do something like that, you kind of leave a spot where this is where the wing goes, if
Large courtyard.
A large courtyard,
a large courtyard.
perhaps.
What about going back over to Eagle Creek?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it comes up regularly. And so, two things. Eagle Creek right now is currently used on a regular basis from Summit Charter, our partner charter school. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 1,200 kids come inside of that. We reap the benefits of that partnership where we earn revenue of $2 million plus for our partnership. And so that allows us to offer more elective credits to kids. And so a school our size offers more elective opportunities than other schools our size, and that's where we utilize that money. It also pays for staffing, is one component of that. The second component of revisiting the conversation about opening River Mill is really twofold. One, the primary growth in the Estacada is inside the Estacada city limits, just on this other side of the high school proper. And so by redistricting the boundaries, a lot of families would need to go past 2 elementary schools in order to get to their elementary school at Eagle Creek. And so we have some logistical perspectives in terms of how we work through that process. And then secondly, Eagle Creek is still on a well and a septic. And so in order to turn that back into a 5-day-a-week elementary school, significant money would also need to go into it to make it preparable for students on a full-time basis. That makes sense. It's kind of the things that we need to work through.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I guess what's the, the conversation during this time is just about current state of things and just kind of projecting, where we think we might be.
Yep,
Hitting
correct.
some roadblocks. I mean, because I think one of the things, there's so many things we've talked about in the past, and the need for more gyms, and, I mean,
Yes.
so you just even think about, we're bursting at the seams in so many ways already. It's like, how can we be creative and resourceful and fiscally responsible, but yet, provide the environment our community and families need. I feel pretty fortunate that we have such an amazing campus. And I feel like
Yes.
there's opportunities available here to even look at the middle school outdoor, we talked at one point, the middle school outdoor basketball area, turning that into a gym and adding classrooms kind of like the River Mill Elementary.
Yep.
And could we, flex those to either elementary or middle school depending upon our configuration?
Yes.
Or, we have these fields in the back.
Yes.
So hopefully we don't have to acquire new property.
Yes.
Because then above the $600 a square foot, that would be crazy.
Yeah.
But I guess where do we go next? I mean, as far as this conversation, is this the time to have those conversations, or do we just?
Yeah, and so the layout of really this conversation is really to report to the board on the facility master plan from the original bond committee, what we've done on our own dime, and then a capacity report, ultimately opening up the dialogue where we're at now about is there any type of pricing and approach. After that, we'll meet with McKinstry, and they'll kind of tell us what next looks like from a facilities report. And then part 3 of this meeting, we'll actually talk about bonds, bond rate. And so really, I think, Director Shibahara, anytime you want to kind of start, there's room in all of these to talk
Okay.
about this.
What about going up?
Like a second level, for sure. Does that still cost 600?
I would defer to the expert. Maybe we could ask him that after
Okay.
this discussion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what is the current high school, what's its capacity? What can it handle? I've heard numbers from the old days, but I think.
Me too. I'll defer to Mike Ware on that.
Yeah, I mean, as you can see, if we're wanting to maintain that 1-to-25 ratio, or
30 at the
1-to-30 ratio at the high school, we are close to that. The building can fit up to 600, 650 students, but then we're pushing our capacity.
So you think it's 650-ish? So when this surge of elementary students hits there, how many will there be?
That's a good question.
There's 850 on these numbers that he just said right now.
You drop 2 classes off because you only have 4 years.
You only have
there,
4.
right?
Yep.
So what would you be at, 600?
Yeah.
It'd be a little bit more than that, but in that ballpark. When I moved to Estacada in 2014 as a high school social studies teacher, we had 780 kids in this high school. I know that it's been in the 800s before. I've been told, like you, that there were 40,000 people here at the height of the logging, but I have never seen that with my own eyes.
It sounds full, but not blowing the doors out on the high school.
It's not. I would also just say again, our ratio 1-to-30 is an initiative that the district wants to maintain. We could potentially throw in 30 kids or 35 kids into a classroom. I know that's again a little bit outside my lane, but not the direction that we wanted to go.
We know that there's room for capacity growth just within the footprint as well. Like we've talked ad nauseum and asked and pleaded to our community to support moving where the central office of the high school is to the front where our current art classroom is, which is a very large square footage area for one art program. And so if we were successful in moving the office to the front, where so many benefits can happen from that, we could remodel what's the current office area that could probably support another 120 kids.
Well, and then the library.
Correct.
Being under,
Yeah.
utilized. I mean, so
So
there's
there-
a lot. I mean,
yeah.
even though this building itself, I think, is large, it's just really configured inefficiently.
Yes.
And it's
Correct.
like, it needs some serious overhauls and, safety things as well.
Yeah.
So obviously, we want to invest in our, resources, but it needs some serious rework.
The first time our high school will be over 600 is our current 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th.
Okay.
Seven,
If,
oh. So when the seventh graders now are
That group of
seniors.
4.
yep, when 7th graders now are seniors,
So-
we'll be at 615 students at high school at our current numbers.
5 years from now.
Thank you.
But build in, I'd
No
say
growth.
between
Would be
50,
a little
with
bit
no
of
growth. Yeah.
No growth.
Which is
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
At least 5.
Well, and then there's the question of like, if you do a overhaul of a building, where do our students go during construction?
Right.
We've seen other schools create portable camps, if you will. Not ideal, but it is possible to do some things, and we have the ground space to do it. I would like to echo what Superintendent Carpenter said. The middle space is a very valuable space that could be used for teaching. And relocating that also increases our safety for many, many things. And I know that's been a number one topic for our bond committee as well.
Yeah.
I do think it's an important, interesting conversation to look at, because a lot of the conversations I'm having right now is elementary is so at capacity, right? If we're going to do anything, we need to add capacity at the elementary level, which makes sense now, but it doesn't make sense
Correct.
5, 6, 7
All right,
years
take
from now.
3 years to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
By the time you get it done, we got to move on.
We're
to
at
that one.
capacity in other
So
places.
I think it is an interesting concept to look at building a new high school and then transitioning, right? It's still, so I went through this right now, of the 36 million that's on this list, roughly 36 million, 33 million, 11.6 is this building. Of that 33 million is what we're asking for here. So I think that's another part to look at. But it would add capacity and allow us to build a facility that is then scalable with a major courtyard we could add more stuff into. Well, leave that drum for a while, just so you know.
If I could ask the board, I'd like Maggie Kelly to come forward for a moment. In the discussion about a new high school, we looked at some polling data from the last bonds, because I was curious, where was our community at in the difference between elementary school and high school? And so Maggie, if you could just very briefly share, and I think the context of the question is also important to share here as well.
Yeah, so we polled our community around the time when we were considering going out for a bond, so around 2019, 2020 time. And we asked 2 questions, well, 3. We asked for a very small bond that would give no additional buildings. We asked for a $53 million bond that would build a new elementary school. And we asked for a $120 million bond that would build a new high school as well as do those renovations. We got 42% with that $120 million ask in the new high school. We got 48% support with our elementary school build, and we got 51% with just repairing the buildings we have right now. We saw the strongest support, like the strong support base, because we have strong and soft supporters. We saw them really surge with the 53 million
That
mark.
middle one, yeah,
So,
okay.
any
Thank
you.
questions?
I just wanted to point out that new high school and elementary school was a 6% difference, which is big, but it's closer than one would think.
Okay.
And with all the new growth that's going on around here, I think you'd get more support.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody is complaining to me about pulling out on the highway in the morning.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, the growth is real in all aspects. Another thing, not that I want to steer us in this direction, so I don't want to move us towards high school when we have elementary capacity problems right now, but we know too that a lot of our families who are moving into us are young elementary aged families. And I do hypothesize that there could be an argument for support that they see their kids growing up through our high school system, and there could be more support potentially for a new high school because our young families envision their kids going through that process. And if it's a new elementary school, that may not affect some people who only have secondary level kids, where that doesn't affect me. And so I could be hot or cold or indifferent. Where a new high school, everybody gets something, where the middle school becomes the elementary school, the high school becomes the middle school, and everybody kind of moves. Everyone is the recipient of a capacity increase, if that makes sense.
Well, and ultimately benefits from a new high school.
And
because
benefits from a new high school.
Most everybody will go there.
Correct. Correct.
Since we're talking about anything and everything,
Yes, please.
what if we go to a K2 3-5 model?
Yeah.
Or a K1? I don't know how the split would be in that same, so I know, we had talked about it in the previous
Yeah.
bond where everybody touches the building, so everybody feels important.
Yes.
And it's like one instead of everybody, us, them, you
Yeah.
know, elementary schools divided. Or
Right. There's a lot of benefits from moving. In today's world, it would be a pre-K2, 3, 5, 6, 8 model, most likely, for our school breakup. And not only, I don't know if that would help capacity,
Yeah, I think we'd have.
but it would streamline resources.
But it doesn't modify the capacity in
No.
those three buildings at all, right?
In
It may
fact,
redistribute
yeah.
some of the capacity.
Correct.
But it doesn't
Yeah. And then what do you
impact
do with that third building?
Right.
It's now what, K5, you know, so then it's.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, you'd still need something. Correct.
still need a third building.
Yep.
The only thing on the capacity is you could go K2, and then if you had an off year, you could go K3 or K1, 2-5 or something, you know.
Right.
You'd have the ability to shrink and expand as you had bigger, smaller classes, and I'm sure that would cause a total uproar in the crowd, but it would allow us to not build a new building if we had a couple thicker classes come through,
Yeah.
thinner.
But I still don't think with the forecasted growth, that would, we
It's not
don't,
gonna
we don't
change
see any gaps in, you know, it's one thing if we see like maybe K1 right now, we're really small classes, so we know we've got some smaller groups that are coming up that kind of reflect more like the senior class of this year, so, but I just don't see that coming.
Yeah. And our boom is really kindergarten, first grade. I mean, you know, it's possible that at some point, if we were to predict 5 years in the future, that building would only have the capacity for kindergartens and first grades.
Right. Okay.
Is Colton still for sale?
If upon your direction, I would gladly reach out to them to see.
We cannot make any decisions tonight.
I'm just asking.
All right, so any other questions? Again, this is really intended to go through what we have, what we know that we need. Any other questions for Mike on that? Okay, thank you for the second one here, showing what we have done.
Yes.
Because that's a pretty lengthy list, and again, $5.6 million of work that's been done internally, or not internally, but out of the general fund and ESSER funds and E-rate funds and grant funds, insurance funds. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think as we transition, as noble as it is that we've spent $5.5 million repairing, I think it's obviously staggering to the need versus what we're trying to chip away at. What we're trying to chip away at is valiant and noble, and we're trying to meet the needs and improve the experience of every child in our school district. But we really need multiple millions of dollars to be where we need to be for our kids.
All right, so we're going to move on and have McKinstry come up, but I don't have a name on this, so you'll just get to introduce yourself when you come up and representing McKinstry.
So good evening. My name is Rick Becker. I am with McKinstry out of our Portland office. And thank you for allowing me to come in and present our approach to long-range facility plans and facility condition assessments. So I'll give a little quick overview about McKinstry, who McKinstry is. Some of you who are in the construction industry might know a little bit more about us. Talk about our process and our methodology for conducting these assessments. We have some unique deliverables that I'll quickly go over, and I do have a demo that I could show, time permitting, at the end. And that demo is really a visualization tool that allows you to look at those assets in some pretty unique and personal ways. How we support this product after the assessment is done and you're looking at moving forward towards a bond campaign. A little bit about our experience conducting these, and then we'll get into some of the fees that this process would. So here's a little bit about McKinstry. We originated in 1960 as a plumbing and piping company out of Seattle and out of Portland. And if you fast forward to today, McKinstry is one of the leaders in the Pacific Northwest in designing, engineering, building, operating, and maintaining high-performance facilities. We do this pretty much across the U.S., but our main office is out of Seattle, and we have a main support out of Portland office. I just realized that the company facts are covered up here on this. So in 2000, McKinstry started a group that was really focused on delivering facility operational optimization consulting. And this includes energy services with its related planning, design, and commissioning, and then as well as the closely aligned technical services group that I'm in that is responsible for our facility assessments and long-range planning. So this history is really important to know because it really informs how we approach our facility assessments. What makes us different from our competitors out in the marketplace, and our integrated cycle of services that we provide because of our in-house knowledge and our experience. Our folks who actually do the facility assessments have worked in the design, the maintenance, the service industry, and that really offers a unique and perspective, and we gain a lot of technical acumen because we know how facilities operate, how they should operate, and how they're built. Because of our firsthand understanding and knowledge of the built environment, I think we tend to take a much deeper look into your facilities than a lot of our competitors, and then we have an emphasis on the ongoing operations and facility maintenance in part of our process. We come out and we actually want to assess every single asset in your facility, but we divide our assessment into two different essentials. First, it's a quantitative assessment. Our quantitative assessment includes the capture of a significant amount of details of each of your assets. It includes operations and your maintenance history. It includes detailed field data for all of your assets. And it integrates with industry standards on life cycle, and it uses our own in-house cost estimating to apply those current and future costs. So you had a lot of conversations about what does a building cost and how much has prices increased. We're very up to date on it because we do construction and we have our own in-house estimators that will support us in that pricing. We're talking about $600 a square foot. That's more on a high school. The elementary schools and middle schools are quite a bit less. And again, that's for a pretty top tier type of facility with all the bells and whistles.
What's realistic for something like comparable to what we have?
I'm not really familiar with facilities here, but I know Beaverton School District is looking at rebuilding their Beaverton High School for about $450. My personal opinion is they're going to be challenged to get there, but that's kind of, so I would say more like 500.
Thanks.
The second essential is our qualitative assessment. And this really incorporates our professional experience and our firsthand knowledge that our assessors have from their past experience. So regardless of who you partner with on the long-range facility plans or the facility condition assessments, the TAP grant approach is pretty much the same. What differs is, or what's important to consider, is the level of detail that you get from these and the accuracy that comes out of them. I was looking at some of the information Mike put up here. And we had 3 layers of needs, so they were rated in 1 through 3. The pricing and the assets were pretty high level, so it was an HVAC system. It wasn't the details of that. And one of the differentiators that we have is that our team, it's our team, it's our level of detail, it's our pricing, and it's our tools that we provide. In this process, we're actually recommending to team up with an architect who will focus on the long-range facility plan. We have done them, we do them, but we just don't have the in-house capabilities to get it completed in the time that you guys require. We worked with a handful of different architects in the past. That I have a slide up here to kind of go through the prioritizations of those who we would recommend to go with, but that's completely up to you. In order to provide you the level of service that we want to, we think the best we can, and other teams are. So in this process, I'm going to focus more on the facility condition assessment. We can see how the facility condition assessment interacts with the long-range facility plan. So the first thing that I said that differentiates us is our team. I kind of mentioned that a little bit. Our team is comprised of local, cross-functional, seasoned, state-certified, and veteran assessors that actually come from the building operations maintenance and service industries. So our first step starts with understanding what you guys know. We'll take all of that information, knowledge transfer from your operators, from your principals, anybody involved in the facilities to basically regurgitate all their information that they know about those facilities. Understanding the project context and the goals is our first and key step, regardless if it's the FCA or the long-range facility. We jointly develop a work plan up front, and we agree upon several points. These points would be like, 1, what is the key rating criteria? I noticed, like I said, you had 1 through 3 rating criteria. We have multiple rating criteria that we can apply to our assessments. We'll talk about communication protocol. We'll talk about timelines, and we'll make sure that we understand what deliverables and what we're expecting. We want to know what your facility pain points are, because it's important to look and align your facility needs with what your operational realities really are. Number 2, our differentiator is our level of detail of assessment. This varies in depths based on the requirements that you present, as well as the type of asset and the influence that that asset has on your capital planning. So by this, I mean that there are certain types of systems that require a much more detailed look, such as your HVAC or your electrical. And then there's another set of systems that require a lighter level of detail that are more static, like your floors, your pavement, and your roofings. So, and this differentiation is important because within your HVAC system or your electrical system, it's comprised of many assets that fail at different times. So if you just put in a thing that says your HVAC system is bad and you need to replace it and it's going to cost you $5 million, is that an air handling unit? Is that a pump? Is that, what part of that system? Do you have to replace the whole thing, or can you, go down and we look at each individual asset? Then when we rate, as I said, we rate from a 1 to a 5. We'll agree on that set of qualitative criteria with your team before we go into the field. That ultimately will be used for the capital investment prioritization. So these additional criteria could be things such as the age, the operational impact, so what happens to the operations if it fails. Can you still have class? If it's a boiler that fails and it's summer or if it's winter, that's a pretty critical item. If it's a fan, that may not be as critical. could include safety or security, or it could be the energy impact of that component. So we would rate each asset with all of those criteria. We also identify the remaining useful life of each of the assets. And there's two useful lives that we rate on. One is its standard life. ASHRAE provides expected useful life of certain equipment, but then we also look at it from an operational standpoint. If it's been maintained really well, if it looks like it's leaking or it's had multiple leaks, we would rate it with less useful life. So we provide both of those useful lives and let you determine which ones you want to use. Our third differentiator is back in our office, our team uses a combination of industry standards and our own in-house database, costing database, which we apply to each of the individual assets. Our database is built off of actual cost estimates, and we use it for our own construction costs, and then it's vetted by our in-house professional estimators. And then finally, once we have those values, we bring it back to you guys and make sure that it matches what you guys are seeing in your marketplace. Our pricing is very localized as well. Because we do projects in this area, we're very familiar with what the local prices are. These prices are associated with the remaining life, and from that, you don't just get what is the cost to replace, which is what you currently have, but you actually get a net present value and a year-over-year schedule for capital replacement. And if you're going to go out for bond every 10 years, you need to know what equipment's going to fail in 7 or 8 years, and maybe be prepared for that. Or even for the next bond, 20, 30 years. So we look out 30 years in our performance. We combine all of these scores into a priority score, and that priority score can then be adjusted based on your personal beliefs of that influence on the overall score. So let's say you have 5 scores, 1 through 5, you can have a total of 25. You think age is more important, you could give that 150%. So then you would have 28 total points instead of 25 total points. So that gives it more of an emphasis. The scores, along with, it also gives you that multi-year roadmap that I was talking about that really is used to, or can help you update and use in developing your prioritization for capital planning. And from that, we also develop a facility condition index. And you were asking, I think, earlier, Vice Chair, about, it was basically 10%, how much of the cost of the projects were at the high school. And compare that to the cost of rebuilding the high school. And that formula delivers a facility condition index. And there's some standards that, based on that percentage, tells you if you should repair or replace your facility. And if you get above like 20 to 30%, that's when you should start replacing the facility. So we would provide that value for every school. It really helps identify. That's a data-driven decision that we would help provide. And then our fourth is really our tools that we deliver. Our report and our tools are not intended to just sit on a bookshelf or on somebody's desk and be a hard copy. Although we do deliver that, we also can deliver that online data visualization tool that I was talking about that helps you navigate through your portfolio at an asset level and really helps you drive those critical decisions based on real data, and then helps you communicate those goals and your plans to your community. We take that information, we work with the architect who's developing the long-range facility plan to help come up with the solution of, or the options of, what is the utilization rate for your facilities, what is your capacity, what is your future enrollment projections, and then based on that, and the age and condition of the facility, is there an opportunity to reconfigure the existing facility? Does it make sense financially to reconfigure that facility? Or can we go up? Or can we just add a wing? And so in cooperation with that architect, this FCA data is really that cornerstone for that information, that decision. Any questions on the methodology or
Yeah,
process?
I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
I'm having a hard time getting my arms around that 20% that you just said. Would you define that a little more for me or explain a little more of it?
Sure. So the facility condition index is really a calculation of, it can have a number of different numerators. Some people look at the first year's cost of equipment replacement needs. Some look at a 5-year cost, some look at a 10-year cost. But in essence, it's the cost of the replacement of your assets divided by the cost of replacing the facility. So if you've got a $100 million building and you've got $10 million worth of need, that's a 10%. So if the FCI falls between 0 and 1%, that's like a new building. That's pretty
Yeah,
good.
I follow you now.
1 to 5%.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
You bet. So here's a little bit more on our deliverables. So the DOE provides a spreadsheet that we have to fill out as part of the TAP grant that allows you to move forward with an awesome grant. That spreadsheet is very high level, and it has a rating criteria of 1 to 3, basically good, fair, and poor. It provides a standardized cost basis for each of those assets, and it looks at the assets at a very high level. So it's HVAC, or it's roofing, or it's what percentage of your floor is carpet, what percentage of your roof is asphalt shingle. What I'm showing here on this spreadsheet is the way we do those forms, but we also put this data into an Excel spreadsheet. We look at the individual asset, we look at the model, we look at the make, we look at the size. We give you any sort of notes, whether it's leaking, if it looks like it has leaked, if it's brand new, if there's trash cans sitting in front of an electrical panel. And then we tell you how many years it has remaining on its life. And we'll have 2 columns for that, as I mentioned earlier. And then you can see we have an asset condition score, classroom impact, and an energy use index score, which sums up to a total facility condition index score. So instead of just those reports, we provide you a very flexible tool to use by way of this Excel spreadsheet. In addition to this, we provide a very comprehensive digital library. So we take a picture, and multiple pictures usually, of each of your assets. So if you have a question, you're sitting back, Mike's sitting back in his office, and he has a question about a particular asset, you can just pull that up and see what what it looks like, where is it, and it becomes very useful, especially when you're trying to go out for a bond campaign. You can show these details to the community. And then we provide a executive summary and a couple page details on each facility. We compile the field observations, we compile meeting notes, we survey, we do surveys, we provide all of that data and the documented interviews into one final report. This report will project your needs for the next 30 years. We combine that with the district missions, your educational visions, your educational standards, and all of that becomes compiled up into that long-range facility plan. We include current facility deficiencies, capacity constraints, and we also look at funding constraints. As I mentioned, in our reports and database, we offer that power interactive visualization tool to help make your data actionable and help you drive to make those better decisions. So here is a few screenshots of our visualization tool. So our visualization, I always struggle saying that word, visualization tool, is called Reveal. And it provides you access to all of the data we capture, and it presents this information visually to identify asset details, comparisons of conditions and priorities across buildings and across systems, and it generates multi-year capital plans for you. It projects a list of assets to be replaced by year, given your available budget. You can create different funding scenarios. You can change the weighting of various factors to create a prioritized list of replacements. So when you have money to spend, the tool objectively shows you where you should spend it. This program has various modules. The module we're showing here is the capital planning module. It has an overview, which is the map at the top, which identifies by color the relative rating of that facility's condition, average condition. It shows location, summary information, and other metrics about that facility. This module also has a heat map, which is that colored chiclet-like graph and chart in the middle. And that shows the overall condition by color and by size of the block, the overall condition of the buildings, and you can drill down and find the individual conditions of the systems and the individual assets within that building. And that allows you to provide those, your own priorities to that data to develop your own personalized lists. And then at the bottom is an NPV chart, which shows the cash flow needed to address your prioritized assets as they fail. And then, of course, you can export the details of this into a CSV file and pull it into Excel and do all your own little charts and graphs with it.
Once you guys have all this information, do we have the ability to manipulate it? Say that we notice that there's a boiler that's accelerating in its death. Can we move that up in the color scale or the blocks there and take it from yellow to red? Or is that something we have to have you guys come back out and say, well, yes, you're right?
No, you can do that. And it's really about adjusting the estimated remaining life or the asset condition. And so you adjust that, and that will automatically feed into all of these visuals.
Gotcha.
This is my page. So post-assessment, our support continues with more detailed project prioritization support and critical system analysis. This helps you really prepare well for that bond and be able to provide accurate and defensible data to your community. This post-bond support process actually usually identifies areas that we need to dig into in a little bit more detail. And it really helps identify and justify any program aspects or support any program aspects. And by that I mean, if you're going to add on to a facility, one of the things the FCA does is it gives you like-for-like costs. So if you have a 5-ton train unit, we're going to replace it with a 5-ton train unit. But you may want to go to a split system. You may want to upgrade to more efficient systems. You may need to, you may be changing the space layout, so you need different equipment or bigger equipment. And so as you drill into, during this LRFP, and you start to drill into your bond projects, sometimes the data developed from the FCA doesn't apply because it's a like for like. And so as we dig through these project prioritizations, that's where it might need more program, you might need more program support and repricing of the new assets. It's in this process important to assure that the critical systems, and by critical systems I mean fire, life safety, HVAC, those systems you really need to make the school operate, will properly accommodate any facility additions, any tenant improvements, any remodels, or expansions. We'll also support community engagement, and so we help you communicate the work you're doing by stressing the importance of warm, safe, and dry schools, and creating awareness of the size of the portfolio that you guys are actually maintaining here, and the magnitude of the systems to ensure that you're aligning your facility capabilities with your educational goals. Do we have the right type of classes? Do we have the right space for those classes? And how does the electrical system support that? How does the HVAC system support that? And finally, we all know bond programs never satisfy the entirety of your needs. If you're only going to go out for $56 million and you need $100 million to do a school, we can help you too by analyzing projects that could be completed outside of the bond dollars through other financial or funding sources to help you extend your bond dollars to go further and support the actual educational needs or facility growth needs. So as you define and you get more specific on your prioritization of projects, that's regardless of who you go with or what you do, that's a really important concept to keep in mind to get the most out of your dollars. So here's some experience just recently that we've done in the last 5 years for this type of program. So North Clackamas School District, we're just finishing up a full FCA there. It's interesting because they are still finishing up their bond work from a couple of years ago, and they're planning now for their next bond. So we did a complete comprehensive facility condition assessment of all of their facilities. Rogue River School District, we did both the FCA and LRFP, and they're getting ready to go out for a bond in November, so we're helping them prepare for that. Did an FCA for Eagle Point School District, Beaverton School District. We did the FCA. We've done 3 annual updates with them. We did an engineered maintenance plan, so that's really taking the details from that FCA and providing maintenance plans for all of their assets through all 60-some facilities, and then also help them with their bond, which they passed a pretty epic one here recently. And then the last one I'll mention is Clatskanie School District. We did the FCA, the LRFP. We helped them prepare for the bond, and we're the design builder to help them implement their bond work. And we're teaming up with BLRB as the architect on that one.
Are the 3 highlighted ones there, or the bold ones there, are those schools that pass bonds? Is that why they're bold?
Yes, thank you. Those are the ones that we actually walked through the whole process with them, and they successfully passed their bond and use our information and to justify and actually defend their bond. And Portland Public Schools actually asked us last year to come in because, they're having some issues with pricing and where are they putting their money and how much are things costing. They asked us to come in and help them with a prioritization of a facility condition assessment that was done by others to ensure that they're doing the right work at the right schools with the rest of their money.
Okay.
Any other questions on this list?
Are these just most recent, or is 2017 the earliest one?
No, these are just the last 5 years.
Okay.
A couple of our assessors will come from Washington, and this is just a quick list of the ones they've done: school districts, hospitals, universities, just to show you the level of experience and they've had. So our fees for this, you can see the buildings that we've included in the scope of work. The FCA price for, wow, that really got screwed up. Let me put that over here. For 406, actually this is for 390-some thousand square feet, is 41,000, which is about 10.5 cents a square foot. Mike asked us to put Eagle Creek as an option, so that's $1,150 to include that one. The Reveal software, there's a setup and a first-year fee for that, and that's $6,300. And then if you want to continue us to support it, beyond that, it's a $1,750 cost. We're looking at about 10.5 cents per square foot. Typically, you'll see these between 15 and 20. In fact, the first time I talked to Mike, that's what I typically tell people, is it's 15 to 20 cents a square foot to do this. One of the benefits here is all your facilities are so co-located. It's close to our office, and so we were able to get you the deal of the century. So as I said, some of our long-range facility plan partners who we've worked with in the past, and these are priority. My first recommendation would be IBI Group. I think they worked with you guys, Mike was saying, a little bit in the first, or the previous LRFP. We're working with them on 3 different ones right now. They helped us on Eagle Point and Clatskanie. OPSIS, we worked with BLRB, as I mentioned, and ORW is more of they're a group down in Medford that we've worked with a couple times down there, and they're used to smaller rural schools.
Where do these guys come into play?
So they conduct the long-range facility plan. So they do more of the team visioning sessions. They'll do educational adequacy tours with your principals throughout the schools, and they're the ones that will hold the community meetings to decide or to get input of what does the community actually want. They'll survey the staffs and the student
So this is in preparation for a bond then, is where they
Yes.
step in?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
It would be our team working together to do all of this, but they are going to be more of the designers of what the art of the possible could be.
You guys tell us what's wrong, they tell us what we can do to fix it.
They'll give you a bunch of options on how you can fix it, and like whether you remodel this and
Right.
you have to buy new property.
Ryan, what was the outfit that helped us in 2020?
Brick architecture.
And then before that, it was the guys, actually, they're not around anymore.
Part of them became brick. I can't remember what they were prior to that.
Okay.
So I think DOA.
No,
Yes.
that's
Yeah,
correct.
And so that's IBI. DOA and IBI merged. But IBI group up here is their educational arm.
Okay.
So a lot of information, we didn't get to the actual demo, but if you want to at another time, we can do it remotely, I can come back, we can do it in person, but I wasn't sure how long this was going to take.
Can I ask one really quick question? At the end there, you talked about the software and the results of the assessments and stuff. So we could continue to use the software, I'm assuming, Mike, to manage this list going forward is the one option where the annual fee, is that correct? Or it is our data, so we
Yes.
own the data and can import it to whatever we want to manage it moving forward? Is that kind of the options?
Absolutely, you'll have the Excel spreadsheet regardless.
Yeah.
And then
regardless.
the visualization tool is that extra cost. But the data is yours. You can edit it, delete it, make whatever changes. And then if you want us to continue to service that on ongoing years, if you find it's valuable and you want an annual update done to it, one of the benefits here too is that the data we provide you is really meant to be a sustainable program. So you don't have to spend $40,000, whatever, for someone else to come back in and do that. You update 3 or 4 items in that spreadsheet and you've got an updated FCA.
Gotcha.
So we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars or Beaverton spent hundreds of thousands of dollars for us to do their FCA. We go back and do their annual updates for $30,000 because we just use that same spreadsheet. It's
Gotcha.
such a great tool.
Thanks.
You bet.
Any other questions for Rick? All right,
Thank you
thank
again.
you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
I just had one comment, Rick. So the fee you gave us was just for the facilities assessment. There is an additional fee for the long-range planning?
Yes, a good question, there is.
Okay.
And so with the fee for the FCA, the state gives a $20,000 TAP grant for that. So your actual out-of-pocket cost would be $21,000. The LRFP is $25,000, and it would be up to the architect on what they would charge for the LRFP.
Thank you.
Right.
That just
Yeah.
got me ready for my next step.
Yeah.
All right, thank you,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is Christina Irish for a bond rates update.
I'm going to first just go over some of the grant information, just because we are finishing the talk of the facility. He gave you the amounts. So we could start that work right away, but we'll apply for those grants come January 1st if the board so moves us. And he gave you the amounts of that. And then here are the dates for the Awesome Grant. That was one question that I had. It is July 15th. It's a hard date. The goal would be to get it in before 12:30 so that we are in the first in time list, so we're get top priority. So just wanted to share that grant information with you.
On July 15th, you're saying?
July 15th for the November, if the board decides to
For the
go for
November.
November. Oh, yes, clarify. And then if we do decide a May election, it would be December 15th.
If we decide a May election and then we get to February and go, shoot, maybe it's going to be November, does that awesome grant stick, or do we have to reapply?
I believe we'd have to reapply, but I would have to double check on that, but I believe we would.
Okay.
So I went to Piper Samuels, who gave us some rates when we were last talking about it last fall. And when I asked to give the current rates, the first thing they told me was interest rates have climbed quite a bit. And they gave me a fun little chart that you would see attached that shows that change right here. So the numbers are quite a bit different than what we looked at about a year ago. So just wanted to start sharing that information. And then they just give you some historical property values for Estacada in our area. Gave you our urban renewal, the amount that we would be qualified for a general obligation if we fully went out, which would be $235 million. And then I'm going to go down to the page. These are our current rates right here. Oops.
Hey, Christina, sorry, can you go back to the 235 million?
Yeah.
Is that just saying if we maximize the amount that we could go out for, that's what we could go out for?
Yes,
Okay,
that would
so
be the
max loan
max
value, basically.
amount that we could go out for,
Okay, thank you.
based upon our. And then this one is right here. This, can I get it there?
Page 7.
Okay. This one is the summary of all the numbers they gave you, and then the backup will give you all the details of that. So the first very big column is our current debt, bond debt that we have right now, and our current rate for this year is 1.4 million, and they're projecting the next 2 years will be at 1.28 million, and that's $1.28 per $1,000 is what we're looking at. So they gave us a couple options. They ran numbers to keep us at 1.28 for the next 20 years. We could get 32.9 million, or we could go for 50 million, but that would increase us 57 cents. Or we could go for 120 million, which would increase us 2.92. $2.92.
So that's in addition to the $1.28.
Addition to the $1.28, yes. If we go out for 25 years, which that can be done, especially if we're getting a building, we could get for 1.28 million, we can get $1.28, we can get 37.5 million. For 50 million, it would cost an additional 37 cents. And for 120 million, it would cost an additional 2.45 million. Not million, dollar per thousand.
So, but that's, if I'm looking at the lines that this is on, just to make sure I'm understanding. So when you go to that far right, we'll just stay there because that's where we just ended. The $2.45 per thousand, that starts in 2025. So that is after the 128 drops off.
Right.
So that would not be an addition.
They're adding 2.45 million to get us our total amount will be 3.73 for the remaining of that bond. So that first year will be a combo of the two bonds.
Okay. So it still says, even though that bond is paid off, we're increasing by the $2.45 per thousand.
In 2025, we're paying off our final bond.
Got it.
Yep.
So if you look at the combined, that's really what
Yes,
dollar we're
the
going
combined
for.
is the amount,
Yeah.
the total amount that we
Okay.
would be asking for.
Thank you.
So after that bond expires, then it would just be $2.45?
No,
No,
It'd
it,
be
373.
It'd still be the
373.
373.
an additional 2.45.
And the reason why you suggested a 25 years if we do a new building, that is
Yeah.
a recommendation.
Yeah, yes, I asked for what would be best, and they gave me both rates, and they said if there was a building, it would feel comfortable going out 25 years. If we are not doing a building, it would be harder to go out to qualify going out that long. The typical is a 20-year.
And then what is so the awesome amount option? Like if we were to get like the highest versus lowest, or, you know?
Yeah, the highest would be 8 million, and the lowest they give us about 4 million.
4 million?
Once once this gets into progress, are we allowed to apply for bonds yearly to be applied to this? Or
Yeah.
is it just a one-shot?
No. So depending on how the boards, there's multiple things. Say, for example, we go out in 5 years and our interest rate drops, we can take this and go and get a new bond and then combine them at a lower amount and possibly have a lower rate.
Refinance?
Yeah, refinance and then get an additional bond. Or, we could possibly just refinance without, if the interest rate drops with board approval, take it and get refinanced at a lower interest rate. But we can cycle a bond as much as the board directs us to take it to the.
We could go out for a new bond every year and just keep adding until we get to that total of 230,
Yeah.
whatever
Yep,
that number was, right? The maximum
Correct.
that we can borrow based on our asset size. So, but there's no, like Portland Public did a $900 million bond and then 3 years later came out and did like a $1.2 billion bond, like 3 years later.
It's just more about what our community would
Will
support.
support and approve.
yeah. I know when Oregon City did theirs, they had the intentions of starting with 1 year and then going on a few years later to do the remaining schools. So it's just depending on the plan.
Yeah. And when was our last bond passed?
2005.
Yep.
2005.
2025.
And that one's not paid off yet, right?
That's going to be paid off in 2025, so it was a 20-year bond.
So we'll take some of our money, if we get this new bond, to pay that one off.
No, so
I thought we could do that.
so the plan would be that if we went and got a new bond, we're so close to the end of this, we won't start making payments on our new bond until our old bond is expired. So we won't have them raising up until the new bond, or the old bond is expired.
So if we
So that's
pass,
why you see the combined one. You see, if we go out in 2023, 2025, there would be no bond payment unless it's a combined one where we're getting to our average amount.
okay,
Does that make sense?
yeah.
Sorry, I could have done that.
I think this really helps having an idea of what the rate would be. I mean, obviously, it's now just trying to assess what our needs are and what our community is willing to support, and I think we were talking about like just envisioning 2030, what is this to, or whatever it is that we're working towards, and building out some different scenarios, and it's just a ton of work ahead of us. I mean, how are we going to tackle this? Who do we have to help lead the charge of pulling this all together to make it successful this time? You know what I mean?
Can I ask you a clarifying question again?
Yeah.
And I think it was back to Director Walpers. So, or maybe Ken, so the 3 columns in the 25-year zone there. So the 2 latter columns are assuming continuation as well? Because you're adding the 1.28?
So if we do not get a new bond, if nothing is approved, our bonds are done and paid for in
Right.
2025. So this is assuming that, yes, we will
Okay.
pay off our final and then start our new in 2025.
But essentially that is $3.73 a thousand, not $2.45 a thousand.
Yeah, it's
With the
2.45
continuation.
additional on top of the
Correct.
126.
So what we would start charging $3.73 per thousand,
thousand.
and that is all on the new bond.
It's not intended as a continuation. I think it's just meant to say that was the base of what our last payment was.
Yeah.
So just trying to say to our homeowners, it's only this much more than what
Correct.
you used to pay.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's not like a continuation of the previous bond or anything. It's just
Exactly.
trying to show
Well, it's not just only, it's more than double.
Right, I mean, it's,
In a $120 million scenario.
yeah,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
yeah.
I mean, it is a significant change, but I think it's just trying to show that, yeah.
Although we could faithfully say that by voting for $120 million, your taxes would not go up the next year, correct?
Because not until 2025.
Nice try.
But it's really that combined column.
Wouldn't go up based on us.
It's the combined column that gives
Maybe
you
you
the
could sell
total.
that, I can't.
Total cost, yes. Sorry if I did not explain that.
No, it was me, but thanks for the clarification, I appreciate it. Just want to make sure I understood that.
25.1 million.
25. So that's the other thing to keep in mind, Director Walper, when you look at the cost compared to the last one. The last one was $25 million at $1.28 per thousand, and this one's $120 million for the 373. So that's why it's such a substantial difference.
And also it was approved at I think it was $2 per assessed $1,000.
It actually, because it starts at a certain per $1,000, but based on taxes and a whole bunch of other things. So when it was approved, it was at $2 per thousand. We haven't paid $2 per thousand in a long time, and currently we're paying $1.28 per thousand. That's what residents are actually paying, even though the bond was approved at $2 per thousand.
And it depends on our growth too, you know,
Right.
how many people are paying that one.
Because that $25 million
Yeah.
is divided by the 6,000 houses that are here right now, right? So then
Yeah.
as you add another 1,000 houses, that money gets,
smaller.
correct, it gets cut into more pieces to be covered by more tax parcels.
If you look at page 6, it kind of explains what Ken's talking about there. Starting back in 2003, you know, it's like $1.46. Goes up a little bit in the bad years of 6 and 7, almost touches $2, and then it kind of fluctuates and then continually drops after 2016 or 15. Where we're at now of $1.28.
Okay.
Do you have any additional questions? A lot of information.
So, and then these subsequent pages are just the options that you rolled
Yeah,
out on that
it's
page 7,
It's a
right?
detailed year by year of the options.
35 million, 50 million, 120 million.
Yep, yep.
Well, that looks like, okay, cool.
We get to keep these, don't we? I mean, are you going to grab them from us, or can we take them home and review them?
I already wrote them. You can have them.
Just don't write on them, exactly.
I already did.
Right now.
So
Okay.
then in the end, though, you have examples of other districts, which is kind of interesting, or other communities within the,
Sorry, I'm getting there, where they're at. Oops, I went too far.
Page 27.
So these are other district response rates, and you can see where we are comparable. We're at the bottom, at 1.397.
But that would say if we go to 3, what was that number, 373? All right,
And we would be up
we're at the top.
by North Platte.
373,
North
we
Platte
would
and
be,
Gladstone, we'd still be below Gladstone.
yeah, below Gladstone, below Riverdale. Or no, sorry, I'm looking the wrong one.
What's the local option rate? Is that a levy, like operational levy?
Local option levy is, it goes into our operating budget. It's an additional, it has to be approved again, and a lot like a general obligation, except it goes to the general fund and not towards our,
The levy is what you pass if you need money to keep your doors open.
Yeah.
The bond is what you pass to improve your facilities.
Correct. Levy pays for people.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is aside from McMinnville, I guess Riverdale, where is Riverdale?
It's in
it's in the
Portland.
middle of Portland.
I mean, the permanent rates that were locked in And this goes back to Measure 595, right? Of the early 90s, locking in the local permanent rates. How low we're locked in at. Which we can't adjust. Right?
Not that I know of, I can look more into that. But
We have to approve it, but I don't think we can adjust.
We approve it at every
Every annual.
fiscal year, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're substantially lower than most of them.
Pretty good cross-section of different demographics of schools and bigs and smalls, Amity, Sheridan, Dayton, Colton, North Clackamas, Colton, yeah. Ooh, look at that, we're approaching the Malalas of the world for the assessed value. I like seeing that.
oh, we are.
We're 1.9 billion. Is that right? Billion with a B? And they're 2.1 billion
Yeah.
of overall assessed, so all their tax rate.
Why is that good?
Just means the
Our value.
assessed values of properties is coming up compared to the Malala School District residential assessed values.
I think it's kind of interesting is looking at the $50 million mark. We're still under $2, which is to hear that that was what was originally passed. I mean, feels encouraging. Or
I think the challenge is that we cannot build well, we couldn't do a high school for 50. And we'd struggle, we wouldn't be able to do what's on our FCA and build another building for 50 million.
I think the best way to look at this is 120 million would be a new high school, 50 million would be a new elementary school, and the 20 million would probably be fixes where you wouldn't even know
Right.
that we had done anything other than just repair and replace and upgrade.
But you wouldn't see it if you drove by.
You wouldn't see it if you drove by.
Well, the parking lot you wouldn't see. but-
Parking lot
but
would be
basically,
paved.
Yeah, you wouldn't even know it's done
New windows.
from outside.
But with the 50 million, is that leave much for like updates to the high school?
River Mill, he said was 68,000. 600 times that is 40 million.
Yeah.
Which if that's probably lower for an elementary
Yeah,
school,
it
maybe
sounds like-
450, 500, somewhere in there. So if you did it at 450, it's 60, I think that said 62,000, not 68, but
Said 68,000 for square footage.
I know, but the
That-
building
oh,
assessment
it
said
is.
62, so.
Yeah,
450,
probably a
that's
couple
30
million. 30 million?
That's 30 million.
So you have
Between
like 20
450.
million left
Yeah,
for other.
yeah. Probably take away 10 for,
Redesign. I mean,
yeah.
you look at River Mill, I don't know what size it is compared to the high school. I didn't look at the numbers, but the way that it's built, you fit 50 less kids in River Mill than you do in the high school right now.
Yeah.
And still have the same number of classrooms available. I mean, seems like it's much better designed.
More
Right.
efficient.
More
There's
efficient,
no
right?
wasted
So,
space. It's all
Yeah.
shared wall, shared wall,
Yeah.
shared wall.
And
all
that's
the
at
way
a
down
1
both
to
hallways.
25 ratio,
excuse me.
five less per classroom.
Yeah, that's,
Yep. Okay. Any other high points from you, Christina?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions?
I went, just talking square footages, I just did some really rough math. Like this wing down here, there's 14 classrooms, 15,000 square feet. Assuming that this could be turned back into 3 classrooms here. So you're talking like 1,100 square foot per classroom. And just going building to building, the other wing on the opposite wing of the high school is 1,600 square foot per classroom, but that includes some bathrooms, 2 different sets of bathrooms. But as you go to the elementaries, it's actually very similar, and in some ways bigger. Clackamas River is almost 1,700 square foot per classroom when you figure in the pods and all that common space. And then go to River Mill, 1,400 square foot to 1,500 square foot.
And you do have some bigger square footage needs classroom-wise for culinary, for the science wing, which is why the science
CTE.
wing is, over 100 square feet bigger per room because of the need there.
As you look at the high school map, though, you can see all of that space that, of course, is needed with locker rooms and extra gym capacity, the commons, the lunchrooms, and then the dead space.
It's a big.
I don't mean that dead space,
But
unused classroom space.
Yes.
Through the whole core of the building is, you got 2 classrooms, and it's arguably the biggest block of square footage. And you can't not have that for a high school, as far as the culture goes.
What?
Just the common
Oh, yeah,
spaces
yeah, yeah.
and lunchrooms and,
But I mean, the office space in the middle and the one big art room out front, I mean, there's
Correct.
definitely inefficiencies in the current.
Yep, and the library
and the
space as
library.
well.
Yeah.
And fortunately, we've got plenty of land here. We could extend out
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
or go up.
And you could literally build a wing out either one of those 2
Yeah.
spots going this way.
It just feels like, though, it's better to reconfigure what we've got before, but you're right. And eventually, though, if we did get
Right.
beyond capacity.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, this could eat up this entire field back here.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, easily, just keep going that
Yep.
direction type of a thing,
Yeah.
which is cost effective.
Correct.
I was gonna say cheap, but it's
Sure.
not cheap.
Less expensive.
Less expensive.
So what about a middle school? How much does it cost to build a middle school?
Depends on how big you want
I
it.
know, but
5.
I'm just thinking if we're at capacity at middle school,
You could theoretically.
could you theoretically, instead of an elementary school, build a middle school and convert the middle school to an elementary school?
Yes, is the answer. And we have the property in the back 20 acres to do any one of those 3.
I'm just thinking cost-wise, right? So
Yep.
we know a high school's
More expensive.
way expensive.
Right.
And then we were talking about the whole, well, that's not gonna, my kid's not gonna get to go to that school.
Right.
But a middle school is also, if we go with the 6th, 7th, 8th,
Right.
most kids will travel through that school.
Yep.
Just throwing out ideas.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to go back to my other question. What do we do now? Where do we go from here, and how, who, what, when,
Well, we
where?
think about it for 6 months or so.
Yeah, right? I mean, again, when it's time to go, it's going to be too late. And
Well, so I do think the next step would be making a decision on whether we're going to do a facility analysis, right? Because that will then give us a better understanding, an updated understanding. I think to your point too, Director Walper, when you look at those dollar amounts, they are 2019 dollar amounts for repairs or replacement, which those might not be as accurate today. But getting an updated analysis of what do we have item by item, asset by asset, because I think, Director Shibahara, to your point, if that number turns into a $50 million number, right, then that changes what we potentially can do or where we need to go to then decide what that next step is. So I think, unless I'm missing something, but I think that's probably the first step.
That's definitely directly next.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I worry about waiting. I mean, like, I feel like we need to be doing multiple things
Yeah.
at the same time.
Agreed. We do.
I mean, if we seriously want to try and potentially put a bond on
Yeah.
next November, I think we can't necessarily wait for the facility assessment to start.
How long does that take? Sorry to call you back up, but
So the FCA takes, about 3 months. We can
Okay.
have that. The LRFP could take a little bit longer.
okay. Thank you.
Other things to consider also is January, well, this is year 5 of 5 of the strategic plan, and in January, we will be kicking off our new 5-year strategic plan process, which is good and problematic. It's problematic in the sense that that's another major undertaking with community engagement. The good thing is that could potentially pair nicely with the community engagement that's required of a potential bond campaign. And so there is a process there starting in January for the board to consider as well.
I don't think we should go, I mean, personally, I think we don't have enough time for November.
with that. I mean, I don't, 2 times now we pushed it too fast. In my
Yeah, because it sounds like we can survive right now. So I think a little more thought needs to go into it, and consideration.
Well, and I think that's where the facilities assessment really comes into play as well,
Right.
right? Because I think we need to have some more conversation and potentially some more polling or, sorry, I always face this way. I always
Hey, man,
think
you're
about
good.
that. I apologize
You're
for
good,
that. But finding the right dollar amount, right? Because again, I think that was a miss the last go-around, was that we went too small last time. Because it was just a Band-Aid fix, right? And
Yeah.
so, and when we look at that strong support, the strong support was for that $53 million one, not the $30 million one. But trying to garner, again, as we look at what the potential plan is, what could support look like for a new building? Because we'd look at 3 options right now, right? A Band-Aid option, a new elementary, or a new high school, right? But there's 6 or 7 different options in between that as well. Because at 120, how much of that 36 million is still left to do, right? So,
Right. That's a fair point.
and so that's, to me, that's where it does come back to the assessment of how much do we truly have here and looking at, and I would be interested to see if we start looking at repairs, and I don't think we'll be there, but if the repairs to this building is 40% of what it would cost to build a new building, then
Time to look at a new one.
it's time to look at a new one, but we can actually give the stats for that, and those are numbers that people will understand. Now, I don't think that's the case, because we're looking at $12 million on our previous assessment versus $100 million for construction, right? We're only at 12% right now, but I think it's important to have a better understanding of those numbers so that we can start having conversations out there. Because if we need a new building, it doesn't really help us to go out and not get a new building and then come back 2 or 3 years later and say, hey, remember that 50 million you gave us 3 years ago? Yeah, now we need another 70 million.
Yeah.
If we're not, just because we're not taking the time to better understand where we're going.
We don't want to be like Clackamas High School.
Correct. But to your point, I don't want to sit on it for 9 months either, and we what if it.
Well, and again, when the bond expires in 2025, I think it's just going to even be harder to
It has to be done before
renew.
that.
So I feel like we're in that window of, okay, maybe 2023 is too soon, but yet I think 2025 is too late. So
Yes.
it's like and we've known that we've done this before, we've rushed too much, and so I hate maybe we kick it off in January at the same time as the strategic plan and build together the
Right.
strategic plan, the
Yeah,
bond.
and collaboration.
But we have to have resources available that are dedicated to this, not just part-time
Yes.
afterthoughts.
You know, the other thing, if I may, is, has anybody talked to the cities to see what their projections are going to be over the next few years? I'm sure, we're all looking at all these new homes that are being built and these new complexes, and is there anything in the wings that's going on right now? I've heard across the street from the Baptist church that they're going to be building, almost all the way up. But when's that going to happen? What's the process? What's the timeline? What's going on?
Better idea of that.
So, as of about a month or month and a half ago, since 2021, 1,100 lots have been approved for subdivision and/or have already been built. So, kind of the cross-mogenation of the numbers, 2020, 2021, 2022, 550 houses have come online. Now, some of those are that 1,100 number, but there are several subdivisions of several hundred houses that are not even online yet, that are out there ready to go, that will be ready to go in the next 3
But
to 4.
they're already approved.
They're already approved.
And planned. They
Yes.
just haven't been built or occupied yet.
Along with, there's one apartment complex that's kind of drawn in, that's 270 units. There's another one that's a 2 or 3 acre unit just across from Campanile Estates. There's another one that's floating out there, but I'm trying to remember where it is. It might be out on Eagle Creek Highway.
Is it on Deuce Road?
Well, there's one at the intersection of Deuce and Eagle Creek Highway I think that's the 270 units.
that all? That's a big chunk of land there.
That's just apartments. There's still,
Oh, apartments. Okay.
there's several hundred
Okay.
single-family lots
Yeah.
in addition to that. So
When
you're
are they-
talking,
When are they planning on building those? Have they got an
they're
idea?
going. I mean, they're just crossing Ts and dotting Is right now.
And a lot of that is excavation that's still happening up there on the backside
So
of Campanella
within the
Estates.
next 3 to 5 years, right? I mean, or
Realistically, if the market continues, yes.
I gotta go.
Okay,
Thank you.
yep.
Do we have your support, John? Even though we can't make a decision right now?
We'll decide after.
You've got my support.
He'll sign the check.
So I guess, Rochelle, to your point, and I really want to make sure that we take, I should get up here, right? Sorry. I think there's some additional analysis that we can do. If we, in my mind, it does make sense to pair this with the strategic plan a little bit because we're going to get community partners in and build that into that. What I think would be interesting, if we have the assessment, the condition assessment, those are the things that we need to start looking at. How do we build that out? And then really just looking again internally, what do we see? Is there anything else that you would want to prepare? Any other information you'd want to have put together?
Well, I thought that we were talking about, is the city doing like a population assessment? Population assessment? Or something along those lines?
Yes, that's correct.
So we should definitely align with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have already directed Mike Ware to work with the city on partnering with that. So we do have an official population study.
Would it be?
But are you saying it was not ready, too quick would be November 2023?
In my personal feeling, I think November of 2023 is a little quick.
So we've talked about May not being an option.
Right.
So we would go November 2024 would be the, because I agree with, if we get past 2025,
It's gonna
I
be
think we're going to run into an issue there.
Yeah.
And is fall of 2024 a presidential election?
It is.
2023.
No, 24.
No, even year. They start in the odd year on the job, but they're elected in the even year.
2020 was the last election.
Yeah. Well, here's the other part though, too. I mean, we've received a lot of advice from paid folks of what we should do and how we should do it, and it hasn't worked out so
Good point.
far. So, I mean, I'm not saying that we just throw it away, but, I mean,
Are you saying maybe May?
I don't know. It'd be worth looking at again. We would have to do some of that analysis internal about voter turnout and those types of things, but I'm not willing to just throw it.
Well, I don't feel like we have to make a decision of if we're going to put it in November or not. I think we just need to make it to move forward with these steps,
Right.
and then we need to assess as we go, how are we feeling, where are we at?
But my gut would say November 2023 is too soon. We have until December 15th to put in for the Awesome Grant if we're going to go May of '24, so we still have time, quite a bit of lead time for that as well if we needed to do that.
That is a decision that we would need to consider
But
for
we need to
awesome
make it.
grant applications. Yeah.
We need to make it by mid-December
Oh, yeah.
if we're going to go that way, which I think we would. We're not going to go out 6 months after we make the decision.
If I could propose to the board, not that a decision is needed at the moment, but something I would like to ask you to consider with seriousness is one of the things we've also run into is we have full-time educational employees who, in their part-time or spare time, we're kind of helping lead from the district end. And it might be, as we think about how we work through this process, to potentially add an additional teammate to our team whose responsibility is to do this. And so they could give the board regular monthly or bi-monthly updates on the work that the school district is doing in preparation for board work, reaching out to the community, starting to build partnerships, utilizing them in different capacities so that we can put someone more on this full-time, so to speak, to help us spearhead a lot of this work.
That's exactly what you asked, right?
Yes, because I feel like, again, this has become, I feel like that's part of why maybe it hasn't been successful in the past. And I can't say that it's not my fault too, because I was definitely not fully engaged or participated in the last one.
Sure.
And so I feel like, we really need to dedicate energy, time, and resources to do it right.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I don't think that part-time on the side.
Correct.
Existing resources, because everybody's at capacity already, right?
Yes.
So,
Beyond.
oh, yeah, so I think it's,
Well, and timing might make sense too from a strategic plan standpoint.
Yes.
Right.
And then looking at, because I don't know if this work is necessarily full-time, long-term,
Right.
but there
Right.
are additional capacities that can flow in and out.
For sure. And if we are successful in a bond campaign, then that role would be able to kind of determine their own future, because then we need to hold ourselves accountable
Managing it.
to doing the work as well.
Right.
yeah.
So then we will, next Wednesday, we'll have an opportunity to decide on whether we're going to move forward with McKinstry on an FCA.
Correct.
Assuming that would be part of our package next week.
Yep.
So I do think that's first step, and then we can also, if we feel like there's additional discussion items around this as we finish up tonight and we get here next Wednesday, then just shoot it to me and I'll make sure it gets on the discussion agenda ahead of time. So I think that's kind of what makes the most sense between now and next Wednesday. Everybody cool with that?
One thing we talked about in the planning of this meeting was a strategic plan for our actual school grounds. I don't know if we talked about it, but it was something that I had mentioned, so you guys can poo-poo it if you want, but
We can't make any decisions tonight, so it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing out ideas, Ken, I don't know what you're talking about. But the idea of identifying if we built a new elementary school, it would go here. If we built an annex, it would go here. If we do this, it would go here. And I keep using hitting facilities as a thing that we don't want to remove, so, because I know that's something that's
Planning ahead.
on the radar.
Yeah.
Or a ball field of some sort, or a playground, or whatever it might be. So, I don't know if that can be paired with a strategic plan, in some way, like a facilities strategic plan.
I think it would be appropriate to pair that with our facilities assessment. So while we're potentially engaging with the community or whatever, that could be built with the facilities assessment.
Because I think we need to know, are we going to be building annexes?
Correct.
Are we going to do portables for a
Yeah.
period of time if we think we're going to go for this at this? So I think it all kind of comes,
Yeah.
it all
Yeah.
kind of comes in the same conversation.
And the strategic plan would support that by the strategic plan pointing us in the direction that we need to have this and follow this.
Right. Okay,
I like it.
I like it.
But
And
we
something
can't
you had
decide.
mentioned, something you had mentioned a while ago, and I don't know if this is something we can actually look into, but as more and more communities are being built, if those builders can provide space
Yeah.
for the school district in that community, and I don't know how we work with builders to do that, but that might be an option for new buildings in the future.
Yeah.
And the community's going to continue to grow down that.
For sure.
Yeah, how awesome would it be to have one up off of Deuce Road?
For sure.
An elementary
Just the
school right
airport.
in there.
Right in the middle of the neighborhood. And that's not an uncommon thing. I know in Las Vegas during their big booms, that was part of the municipal requirements, is they had to provide space for a school inside those
Right.
new subdivisions.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, anything else?
I feel like there's a lot more, I just didn't know how long we want to sit here and talk about it.
Well, we have 10 minutes
10
and
minutes.
22 seconds.
There you go.
And this is a great opportunity to talk.
I think one of the things we didn't talk about, which was kind of the debate about this conversation, is how much do we look back at what was done previously and the polling that was done previously, and how much to factor that into moving forward. But I still think that the strategic plan and the facility assessment and getting a better current state is going to do more than looking back, I think.
I agree.
Yeah.
And the reality is the community looks different than it did 3 years ago.
It really does.
I mean, it just does.
Yeah.
And so, to your point, I think it's worth spending the time to get new data, to do new polling, to see what the priorities are and what the appetite is now.
Yeah, there's still value in some of that old data
Yep.
to look at it over time.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Rochelle.
One thing that earlier in the conversation I was thinking about is the lens that we look through this or sell this to the community is, well, we can look at a $50 million and it affects us by whatever the $1.85 per thousand. But if we shift the mindset to a need and it's capacity, it's updating our facilities, whether it's 46 million or 64 million, does it really matter? Like, if there's a need and we can prove that, is it worth just saying, okay, let's stay under 50 million because it's going to only go $1.85? Or is it better off to say, you know what, let's flip the page and we need 64 million and it's going to take us to here and we're going to address our capacity and we're going to address all of our needs. And our schools will be good for X amount of years, hopefully. You know, we're not going to have any major roof projects or anything like that, God willing, for the next 10 years.
100%. I mean, I think when we go back, we're going to go back with a number that has stuff behind it. These are just ideas of like what it would cost, I think, at the moment. It's definitely, I think the facility assessment and all that stuff we're going to build and say, we need $70 million.
But that's the nut that we have to crack, because when you look at the last polling, across the board, everybody agreed that the needs were there. Right, across the board. I mean, super high agreement, absolutely, we need this, we need this, we need this. And then when it came to, do you want to pay for it, it's like, no. Right, so building, how do we build on that belief that this is needed, right? This is not just a pie in the sky, we want glass walls and atriums. Right, that's not what we're looking for. There was a couple drawings that looked like that at one point in time, but it is needs-based, and so tying it back to the need, because that's even more important in our community of why we're gonna have this ask.
But it's definitely probably not going to be exactly $50 million.
Correct.
Right, that's well said. And where can the community help us? You know, we're just coming off of a major community win with the coalition of building the turf field, where our community was able to offset some of the costs that were there. And so even though our ask could be whatever, and I think is also a winnable argument right now, at least from our past experience, that here's what we need and here's maybe where we could get some help. I think it was Director Johnston this morning in a different meeting I was in with him, where, you know, we're a DIY community, and if we're going to, maybe we buy 40 air conditioning splits, but maybe the community comes down and helps us install that to reduce cost. And so I think that there's some other things we could tap into to support that.
Well, my mini split's still not working in my tiny house, so don't hire me.
Maybe we can find a guy to help you.
Yeah.
But you're gonna have to pay them, so we don't have to. School project. Cool.
I'm glad we finally had this meeting, though.
Yes, thank you for.
Yeah,
continuing
thank
to
you.
push.
Your
Keep pushing for
leadership on
this,
this is
so.
I feel
great.
like we've
Yeah.
been having this conversation for a long time, but not really having it. So
Yeah.
I wish Rosa could have been here, too.
Yeah. Yeah, and her perspective is excellent, too, that we missed.
All right, anything else for tonight? All right, we're adjourned.